Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. I've been talking to a lot of cats over the last 6 years about leadership, love, overcoming adversity, and the lineage of all musics. Everybody from Bill Cosby, before the world caved in on him, to Tony Orlando, to Ronnie Hawkins, and just before we're talking to David Clayton Thomas, and now I get a chance to continue to elongate and enlighten myself and the world by talking to another gifted singer, a guy who's always created a propensity of hit records, but he knows in his mind and heart you're never going to make a hit if you're trying to make a hit. Andy Kim, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
I'm excited to talk to you, and you have some cool guests that you've already spoken to.
Well, it's beyond that. I mean, once you secure the guest, it's one thing, but then you actually have to crush the interview too. So that's my main goal. And
well, I'll just see this as a conversation.
Oh, it's a jam. It's a total jam. It's a jam. You know, I wanted to talk to you about that point though, because there is so much heightened, the lack of a studio scene, the lack of patience within our musical construct today. Younger musicians feel the onus is on them to. They have to make a hit. They have to make a hit record. They have to make a hit. They have to do it. They don't have time. Have you ever made any hit music when you were trying to make a hit?
No. You're just, I don't know if you were even trying. Every time I've tried to write something, you could hear the craft and not the inspiration. So at the end of the day, look, let me start off with a Mark Twain quote that I read not too long ago, and it took me all this time to find it because I don't know where it was, but Mark Twain had been around a long time, as you know. The two most important days of your life, he said, the day you are born and the day you find out why. So I always go to, so why are you doing this? So what is the purpose? Why are you here? And I think that, everyone that feels that they can go and auto-tune themselves and write songs and all of that, it's fine, except I was asked once, what is the thing that you feel most changed the music industry? And the first thing I thought about was auto-tune, and because it gave us an avalanche of voices, and a lot of it is noise. So I come back to what is a hit? I don't know how to explain it.
No, I think, well, first of all, what you don't even realize is that today is my birthday. I'm 39 years old today.
Oh my God, okay. Happy birthday to you.
But on top of that, so the day you were born and why you were put on this earth. And I know that at this point at 39, as a Gen Xer, I'm the only one doing what I'm doing in the entire world, conducting these long-form jams with musicians and artists and entertainers who were creating from before I was born. So I answered both of those Twain questions. And the auto-tune thing, with a problem that we're dealing with here, Andy, is that it's about authenticity. And this is what I want you to talk about. I mean, nowadays, you can go out to, I was out at Emil Richards' house doing an interview, the great percussionist, and he would say something like to the engineer, someone would be singing, and they'd say, how do I sound? And the engineer said, terrible, come up, we'll fix it. So in today's musical paradigm, you don't even have real musicians. They just have 30,000 Twitter followers, or they look pretty, but they can't even really sing or play music. And that speaks to lack of authenticity across the board. Can you riff on that for a minute?
Yeah, you know what? Look, I know for a fact that sometimes um, uh, we are looking for an answer, and the answer eludes us because we're looking for an answer that's outside of our frequency, and no one is connecting to that frequency. So, I've been privileged enough to take um, um, the time to speak to young musicians and talk to them about not so much the songs, but so why are you here? What is your purpose? Why do you want to do this? Um, if someone asked me that question, like why did I want to do what I did, I'd say, hey, I wanted to get the girl. That's why I wanted to do it. I wanted to get the girl. But in order to get the girl, there were some things that you needed to accomplish. And luckily, someone thought I had some kind of talent, albeit in the embryonic stage of being a talent. And so, and I'll speak to people and I'll reference what you said. Well, I got 10,000 people on Facebook, or I've got this. I said, well, just name me 5 of those friends. Just tell me who they are. And I think that it's almost, for me, it's a little sad that it may be a world of more image than it is of substance. So you look at who are your heroes? If your heroes are people that don't write songs and don't really perform and don't take the time to find their audience, your heroes are the people that are celebrities. Well, that's another kind of a job. I think to be a songwriter is a blessing. I don't know how to teach anyone to write a song. I mean, you can teach chord structure, you can teach dynamics, you can teach, but you can't go further than knowledge if that's all you have and feel that you're inspired by something. So not to put down any generation. It's just the idea that because you have the tools, it doesn't mean that you belong in the playground. And I have a buddy of mine who has a great line. And when I was talking about looking for a certain amp that I wanted to use, and he said, hey, why don't you call what's his name? And he said, great A gear, C talent. But he had the stuff. And so it's such a difficult position to be in to say, hey, you should be doing it this way. You should be doing it this way. You should be doing it, period. Put in the time and the effort to write a song, because that's the foundation of everything. That's from my generation.
Exactly.
Maybe someone else today can say, look, buy this piece of gear because it's got the greatest beats in the world. But you're talking to someone who believes that the song is God. The inspiration comes from somewhere. It's not, that's why I've often told people, oh my God, you wrote all these hits. I said, well, you know what? I can't take a bow for inspiration. And it's the truth. If I could write a book about whether it was, How Do We Ever Get This Way, or Baby I Love You, or Sugar Sugar, or Rock Me Gently, or any of these satellite songs that were out in that time, I wouldn't be talking to you. I'd be on some island somewhere. and with magnificent, beautiful creatures and a sailboat and and a piano and a guitar. So it's not something that you can read about and do. So not everybody that's in the race really should be in the race, is I think what I'm trying to say.
I want to read you.
And
yeah, no, I think you're nailing this, and part of it is also like what you were talking about before is you've mentioned it, like why are you doing this? But it's also like what are your intentions? And I want to read this quote that I transcribed from my interview with Larry Coryell, rest in peace. He said, let's see. Well, I'll have to find it here. Some Embracia. There was a lot of stuff. People in Europe appreciate jazz more. It's a pretty sure guess that a lot of African American musicians wanted to escape the horrible prejudice. They didn't get that so much in Europe. Black music. I guess what I was trying to get at is it's about embracing a lifestyle. I mean, I was talking to David Clayton before. David Clayton Thomas. I mean, David Clayton Thomas was beaten by his father and spent a long time in jail before he got out. Merle Haggard, who I interviewed, spent time at the hole in San Quentin when he was making hit records. But these guys actually had a story to tell. They were living the music, okay? I mean, can you talk about living the music and how a song might have come out of you based on your actual living conditions? I maintain it's very hard to... Listen, even the hip-hoppers and the breakbeat cats, those kids, when they took the instruments out of the schools, they just went to the park and started using electronic drum track. But they were doing it based on desperation. And I'm just wondering if you could personalize it in your own life and talk about how the music came out of your own authentic life.
Well, you know, I don't know how to answer that question, so I'll just tell you about me. I'm not a school musician. I've been fortunate enough to be inspired to write, and so therefore I think of myself, you know, songwriter, singer, and not singer-songwriter. I think about the fact that somehow or other, whether it was poems that I wrote or whether it was lyrics or melodies that were fractured, but they were the building blocks of my childhood. I didn't seek out to be anything other than finding out, you know, and maybe I'm a bad interviewee on here, but I never sought out anything other than to kind of be within who I believed I was and am. And so I started out strictly loving the music I heard on my transistor radio in Montreal, Canada, where you didn't hear a lot of English songs or you heard mostly French songs, but the radio stations that I heard were WKBW in Buffalo and WABC in New York, late at night through a little transistor radio. It was my smart everything. And I was fascinated by the sounds that came at me. Now, I'm the third of four brothers. My brothers were not, they loved the music, but they weren't fascinated. Something within me drew me to those moments that I could hear something on the radio that, oh my God, what is this? And this kind of peace came over me when that music was playing. And when I stepped out of that emotional booth, I was just kind of empty. And look, in my time, you didn't have that many choices. You know, you couldn't Google anything. You didn't have, you know, the opportunity to type in a couple of letters and you got iTunes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another dynamic in how you're growing up and what your passion is. I was asked recently to speak at a pop symposium, and they started talking about songwriting. I don't know what it is. I used to have this wonderful soliloquy about songs that came from inside, and they really were directed at whatever, and part of it was fabricated, part of it was kind of true, but I didn't know. I really didn't know. And then I'm in a Chicago hotel room with my guitar sitting on the bed, and the TV is on mute. And I'm just doing a show that night. And in the middle of kind of rehearsing on my own and going over my song, Paul McCartney's face is on the screen. Well, I drop the guitar and I turn the TV up. And he's asked a bunch of questions, and he's asked about it. Well, how do you and John write songs? And he said the word that freed me. He said, I don't know, it's magic. So when you hear him talk about yesterday, or you hear it's a dream, it wasn't a dream somewhere, it was called something eggs or whatever it was called at the beginning. You find yourself in a space. When I'm at the piano or at the guitar, I'm in a space. And for me, if I think I'm gonna write today, I never think of those things because I write every day. I never think about the conscious part of me, because the conscious part of me will say, "Oh yeah, I gotta give Jake a call. Oh, I should make a cup of coffee now." Everything to get away from the zero that is in front of you. And so I just feel lucky that I was able to tap into this. And I was always afraid every time I had a hit record that was the end. Every time I finished a song, okay, well, I don't know how I got here. Then I learned that door is open to me. And it's more than Facebook, it's more than Twitter, it's more than social media. That's called marketing. But what are you marketing? You know, you can be marketing a look. Elvis had the look. You could be marketing a voice. Elvis had the voice. You could be marketing a hairstyle. Elvis had the hairstyle. But he didn't piece it together by going online. It's who he was.
Well, I know. I mean, we're talking to Andy Kim here on Power Talk Live, having a ball. Can you talk about why they're, you are Lebanese, of Lebanese descent, and I just wanted you to talk about. I could be wrong here, but like Pat Boone was always ultimately you had race records in the States, and then ultimately the song would become popularized by a white singer, but there was really no color bar in Canada, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about. Because if I'm not mistaken, cats like George McCrae were covering your tunes. I mean, you had black singers. Well, is that right?
Well, I had the honor of having Wilson Pickett and Tina Turner and Bob Marley record "Sugar Sugar," man.
I mean, that
you go
is
from
so
the Archies.
Awesome, right? I mean, what you just said in your previous statement, it's magic. There you go. And you just nailed it. So please continue to riff on that.
Well, I just look, it's one spirit. It's like I listened to Marvin Gaye. I saw a thing the other day, and I just kind of froze because it was Marvin Gaye, and I remember being on the 405 freeway, and there was a bulletin on the radio that he just got shot. And I thought about all his music, because that's really what I thought about Marvin Gaye. And when I think about artists, artists who really identify with their time, those artists really are just kind of they're missionaries to me. They come at you with this freshness, with this ability to make you hear and listen to something that you haven't heard or listened to before. And maybe, just maybe, you have, but you didn't hear it from them. So, you know, it's almost like you get the power of a Whitney Houston, God rest her soul, singing a Dolly Parton song. And she took those lyrics, and you believed her. You believed. You could have said, "Hey, she wrote that song," and I'd say, "I believe that." Look. There are those artists really that just come along once in a lifetime, and you can count them on your fingers. And I don't pretend to be one of those guys or one of those artists. I'm just happy to have been part of the community and lucky enough to tap into something that sold records all over the world. But you know, you live your day. You know, I'm happy about one thing, and it's kind of a little sad too sometimes. But I just, those moments that are gone, they're gone. Yesterday, it's not that there's no value in it, but I don't carry it with me. It's a brand new day. What am I doing now? What am I doing with my life? And I don't mean this to turn out to be a psychological breakdown, but I think that it's important for artists to understand what an artist is.
Why don't you break? I want you to tell me exactly. Yeah, go ahead. Go right now.
I was going to say that there, if you give me someone with passion, someone with the ability to really zero in on one's passion, I don't care what it is, that guy becomes a master at what he does. Because when you have passion, you put in the time, you put in the hours. Someone once said something really, really, I smiled and laughed at it, but it's true. And I'm not pinning one generation against another. But he went on to say, you know what? Once upon a time, I have to believe that when Greg Allman went to the bathroom, he took his guitar with him. And now, when a guitar player goes to the bathroom, he brings his cell phone with him.
Wow. Coltrane.
And I thought that was such a...
Well, no, I mean, Marty Balin.
Go ahead.
Marty Balin from Jefferson Airplane was at the Jazz Workshop, and Coltrane finished his solo, went over to the urinal and took a piss, and he was still playing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it is. Yeah, it is a love supreme. The artist's life is a love. You know.
Supreme. Well, absolutely, and if you bring jazz and you bring blues into it, and you look at the history of those artists, you know, if you set aside that special pedestal for, you know, Miles Davis and his peers, but you look at the jazz musician, you look at the working musician that makes a living from, or not a living, but that's where their life's work has taken them. It's not a life wasted if you don't have a hit record. It's a life wasted if you're looking for a hit record. In the meantime, not putting in the time and the hours and trying to clone whatever's in there. And look, I'm not here to disparage any decade or this time, but the important thing for me has always been, so who are you? Who are you? And most artists, you can tell by their music, you know, and there are artists that are behind the scenes that are working at their craft. So, you know, I may sound like someone from another generation, which is what I am, and I'm comfortable in that. I think if there's anything that I'd like to pass on is the authenticity of really having the passion to not look over your shoulders. Here's something else, and I read it somewhere where Clive Davis was having dinner with, I think, Paul Simon. And John Lennon, who had not recorded in a long time, was passed by the table. And Clive Davis had mentioned him. He said, "Well, I hear that you're going to, write songs for a new album. Who have you been listening to be inspired and stuff?" And John Lennon said something to this effect: Picasso doesn't go and look at a Rembrandt so he can be a Rembrandt. Yeah. And the truth is, just find out who you are. Just find out who you are. And sometimes it's hard. Someone else will help you find out who you are in that. But if it's already been done, then it's all been done.
My show I mean, this is not listen, I have done 700 plus interviews with cats that go back. I mean, everyone from Ahmad Jamal to Ramsey Lewis, Randy Weston, all the way through to, I mean, it's been a deep intergenerational dialogue for the last 6.5 years. And I have found myself, mainly because this is not about preservation. This is about promotion. Music is not made the way it was when you were coming up. And so it's about, to me, the focus of the show is on the 4 L's: leadership, love, overcoming adversity, and lineage. And I want you to you said something very interesting to me, because it's like, I get through my today is my 39th birthday, and I go out to dinner with my wife and kids tonight, and it's great. And I'm connecting people using the tool of Facebook. Okay. So for instance, the story that you told about Marvin Gaye. Okay. I am friends with all of the Gordy family on Facebook. And when the story goes up, whether it's a story about the Merry Pranksters, whether it's a story about Ronnie Hawkins, whether it's a story about, it could be anybody, Clive Davis, those things will boomerang all over the place, because my show is about humanity. So it's about how you use the technology. But ultimately for you, when you made a hit, and then you all of a sudden felt that despair that it was never going to happen again, what kept you going?
Well, here's the interesting part about me. I have no known skills.
Me too, man.
That's what kept me going. I had no known skills.
Sure.
I knew a long time ago that this was what I needed to do for my salvation. When I was a kid and I couldn't really understand it, this is what I needed to do for my salvation, because there was nothing out there. I mean, I went to parochial schools and I loved school, but there was nothing out there that I wanted to be. I wanted to be in a community of performers. And when I was a kid on Saint Denis in Montreal in the summertime, the Wallenda family would take a few blocks, and they would do their high wire, and they had no safety net. They really had no safety net. And I all marveled as a kid just watching them, not only walk solo, but build a pyramid of a balance that still today is kind of mind-boggling to me. And I think one of the grandkids just crossed the Niagara Falls or something a while ago. I'm not sure.
Right.
But I have no known skills. This is all I know. And if you have no known skills and this is all you know that you're going to succeed at something. And so that story is unique to me. There are some great musicians that also, play several instruments, and I never tried to be anyone else but myself. But I wanted to be in that playground where music was alive and songwriters shared ideas and producers, spread their magic around. And there was a place called the Brill Building in New York City, and it's where I learned how to write songs, and what a gift that was for my life. But there's if you go back in history, I turn around and say, well, everybody knows Bing Crosby, but Bing Crosby had children, but they never became Bing Crosby. Frank Sinatra, there was a Frank Sinatra Jr., but God rest his soul, it wasn't Frank Sinatra. I often think, thank God that Elvis didn't have a son, because that would have been a burden beyond burdens. But you look at McCartney and Lennon and all of the things that happen within yourselves. Michael Jackson, part of a huge family, but only one Michael Jackson.
Can I ask you?
So,
this is important. I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, when you were, can you talk about? Did you work with a cat named Ron Frangipani at all?
I did. Ron Frangipani, I worked with, yes.
Yeah, because what I'm trying to get at is in that Brill Building. I mean, George Clinton, otherwise known as Parliament, that cat was in the Brill Building cutting demos for doo-wop groups. This is a little before your time, but I want to know the kind of rhythm sections. I mean, who were those rhythm sections that were helping those hits? Because that's the other part of my show. I mean, I started for the first 2.5 years. I dedicated it to black jazzers, the accompanists, because that's another thing in our society that we have really I mean, you look back at Hal Blaine and the Wrecking Crew, those cats never had their names on the back of Beach Boy albums, and they didn't care. They were moving up economically. But then pretty soon, all of a sudden, accompanists started to appear on the back of records. And those accompanists help make those songs full of love. So I'm just trying to figure out the rhythm sections that stand out in your mind that really helped you cultivate the Andy Kim sound and helped your tunes travel the world.
Well, from my early records, where we made all our early records in New York, you get Chuck Rainey on bass. I don't know if that rings a bell to anybody out there.
I've done 2 interviews with Chuck.
But it's
very tight. Yeah.
It's just a phenomenal someone who can take the bass and glue a record together, and he's done it several times on my records. You get a guy like Buddy Saltzman on drums. You get
it's like Richard T. or Bernard Purdie, or you had Saltzman on drums.
Saltzman and Chester on drums.
Oh yeah, sure.
I'm trying to there's Al Gogoni on guitar. There's and I'm talking about the New York days.
Sure.
And there is you'll help me out here. A guitar player, phenomenal guitar player, played acoustic and electric, but mostly electric, and also traveled with John Lennon. And he passed on about 2-3 years ago. And I'm trying to I see his face, I see his fingers moving on the frets, strings and all, and I'm trying to remember. It'll come to me, but I'll have to email it to you.
No, I was going to say. Go ahead.
It was always the same people, and so therefore, for the most part, you can develop a sound. But these were actually living, breathing, talented musicians that came and and donated their artistry to your music. And I think that to me, yes, they're a work for hire, and that's how it was set up, to be a work for hire, and they didn't want to be part of a band, and I never was part of a band, and so for there to be an Andy Kim sound, which I didn't think was really happening at the time, but as I look back and listen to those records in the sanity of someone who's on the back porch of his days, I realized that the sameness caused a certain amount of sonic reverberation. It's heartbeat to heartbeat. It's recognition. It's caring. It's understanding that, hey, this is my first recording session, and then it's my third recording session, and then it's my 30th recording session, and we gather all at the same time for this purpose of listening to a song that I'm playing them on the guitar that they're gonna help arrange and make a record out of.
Were you talking about Eric Gale? Eric Gale, by the way? Was it Eric Gale?
No. I'm just.
It's all right. You're gonna have to. We'll get to it later. I have to ask you a question though. I've done 2 interviews with this cat, and I noticed that you did a very mercurial album on Uni, and I was wondering if you could talk about how you connected with Stuart Levine.
I mean the UK producer.
Well, no, he was a bebopper out of New York, but he had the Uni label with Hugh Masekela. And I'm just looking here at your discography. 1973, you did a self-titled album on Uni, UNI.
Yeah, but that Uni was universal. It was a different Uni, unless it got morphed into something else. And I don't think it was 73. It could have been 70. Yeah, may have been 72, 73.
No,
I'm not sure now.
It was 73. But Uni was an offshoot. It was was it on the West Coast? I'm trying to get an idea of how that's.
Yes.
Right. So
it's a West Coast, but I recorded it in New York.
See the Uni label. So you recorded that in New York. That's fascinating stuff. I guess as your career has gone on, even today, if you could just talk a little bit about your concept of love, and ultimately how you bring love to the world. Aside from these amazing songs, we're living through a time now in this country. Again, it's very clear. Talking to John Mayall and Dave Mason and John McLaughlin, there is no color bar in Europe. In Canada, there is no color bar. In this country, we still can't get over the original sin of our country, which is slavery. And we are getting now to a point more than ever before where we have become pitted against each other, the other. We're more multi-ethnic now than ever before. We're more diverse than ever before. We have the largest income inequality since the Great Depression. It seems to me that I started my show 6 years ago in a direct response to this sort of irrational humanity, this behavior towards humanity. And it's turned into something, it's blossomed, into something that I could never even have imagined. And I wanted you to talk about your concept of love and how you bring love to this world in 2017.
Well, that's a pretty big question for me to try to answer, but I'll try and answer it this way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's less of that in the musical playground than there is in the political playground. I think that when I think about the headlines of today, I mean, basically from a musical place. Hey, what do you got? What do you got to play? I'm stuck here at this bar here. It didn't matter who it was. It didn't matter. The color of your skin had nothing to do with it. The sound that you brought may have been an R&B sound, and may have touched on what someone else went through. But when you hear the early James Brown records, and you hear the cry from his spirit to where he came from, and to elevate everyone's spirit in his community, you can turn around and say, well, you know what? That's a powerful moment. I recognize love by its ability to see that hey man, there's only one God. There aren't 1,000 gods, and maybe there are, but I believe in one.
Yes.
And I believe and lived my life in the best commandment ever. Do unto others as you would like others to do unto you. And so if I'm colorblind when it comes to talent, when it comes to music, when it comes to food, when it comes to I get in the car with a cab driver, a pilot. It doesn't. Color has nothing to do with it. It's did you put the time into your work? Now, someone else can try and divide us. And I think every time we come close to being one, someone tries to divide us, because there's more power in division than there is in the community of spirits that love each other. So I'm the third of four brothers, and I once asked my brothers this one question without wanting to know the answer. I said, hey, this is after my mom and dad passed away, and God rest their souls, and it was just the four of us. And I said, hey, I had a thought on the flight in from L.A. I'm just kind of curious. I know we all each love each other unconditionally, but do we like each other the same? And so the elder said, no. I said, I'm not interested in the answer. It's a question. We love each other unconditionally. Do we like each other the same? So there are 2 points to love here. You can love somebody and not like them all the time. I may not like or my brothers all the time, but I love them unconditionally. The musicians, the people that I'm around, we have differences of agreement on life. But it's good, because we have each other's back. We care about how they're feeling on the inside. And how you feel on the inside is really not what your political affiliation is. That's the Super Bowl. You know, it's organized for it to be the Super Bowl. And so you got to choose a side. God, wouldn't it be great if there was a couple of other teams playing at the same time?
I just think it's so prophetic what you just, do you feel like, without being too idealistic here, this idea of becoming closer to one? At 39, when I was at Boston University in the 90s, I really felt like it was, in my own naive way, an incredibly post-racial society. But do you feel like we were inching that much closer to being one human race, and then all of a sudden division crept in, and because it was easier, this certain people become entrenched in power? How close were we to this ideal vision? Because what you just riffed on was legit.
Well, I just say, look, you want to know, here's, at the end of the day, it's when I think about when I listen to a song, I'm listening to a song. I'm not listening to where it was recorded and who the drummer was and the bass player, because then you're breaking it up and listening to other things. I think when people are genuinely allowed to be free, we understand the anxieties and the pain that goes through everyone's life. I don't care what the color of your skin is. It's inside this container that we live in. You can switch someone's, part liver to someone else part liver. You can give someone a kidney who's of a different racial origin. These parts are transferable. So what's not transferable? It's really kind of a thought process. And why are we taught that we're different when we are the same? We should be taught that to love each other, maybe not like each other all the time, but love trumps like all the time for me. Jake, you and I can, get together and have a complete disagreement on if yellow is a better color than blue. And you'll swear never to talk to me. But if I know you need me, or you need someone, or you need something, I'll be there. That's such a powerful thing. And I don't know, in today's, world, I sometimes think, and maybe I hope I'm wrong in this, maybe I'm starting to think that man's inhumanity to man is becoming human.
Exactly.
And it hurts the daylights out of me, because it's not how I grew up. And I know, look, we look at the history of this planet, and it's not marked with, we remember the wars, but we don't remember the pain and the anxiety of those wars. We don't remember a lot of that stuff that people went through. And on both sides of the equation. So someone else brings you to, I don't believe we're born with hate. I believe we're born with love. And I think we search for love in every corner of everyone's personality. Hate is taught to us. It's drilled into us, or there's a vacuum inside of us, so we fill it with hate and misunderstanding. But at the core, I believe our purpose is to love. What greater gift is there? What's the upside of hate? There's no upside. It's all downside. What's the upside of love? It's the ability to create an environment where you smiled as a child, and you were able to have a friend with that's a different color, but it's not a color thing. And I don't know what the answer is. I'm not smart enough to figure out an answer, but I'm smart enough to feel that this problem has an answer. And we're afraid to take that problem. We're afraid to hold hands and say, we're bigger than this.
Right, because it doesn't seem to be a macho thing to. You are spot on, and I just in this time of insanity, believe me, as a trying to raise my family in this environment, I think what you said before is, people, we are all one people, and the problem is that when people are fearful and people play to those fears, and they have a very small view of the world, that fear turns to hate, and that is the danger, the precipice. That's the precipice that we are dealing with now, and I think that your words are prophetic, and this idea of inhumanity as a sign of whatever the way you waxed poetic before is exactly right. It's becoming part of our, it's becoming part of regular life and how we treat people, and so really my show has been about pushing back against that kind of callousness. And it's through peeps like you, man, who can really articulate this stuff on the bandstand and on my radio show. Before I let you go, I really wanted to ask you: did the beat poets, or even cats like Lenny Bruce, did they have an impact on you as far as individualism? I mean, I've jumped over the psychedelic movement in some ways because. I love some of those cats and the bands that came out of that movement, but none of that would have been possible without the Merry Pranksters and the Beats. And I've been talking to all those cats, and I just want to know if any of those guys were on your radar at all, if you ever crossed paths with any of those cats.
Well, I didn't personally cross paths, but I recognized that they existed, and I recognized that people that knew more about the scene than I did would talk about the scene. And there was one thing that stayed in my mind when they talked about those brilliant poets, whether it was, Lenny Bruce or
Ferlinghetti, Ginsberg, yeah.
Geez. Yeah, Ginsberg, et cetera.
Yeah.
Here's what I heard. And it encapsulates a lot. And what I heard is that when one of these guys were talking and someone said, "Hey, I just bumped into Jake," and they would say, "Wow, what did he have to say?" To me, that was like, that's the most beautiful thing. It's not what was he wearing, what did he have to say? And I think that, when you talked earlier about fear turns into hate, with a child, fear doesn't turn into hate. Fear turns into an unknown. We learn to hate. Fear comes from, I remember as a kid having these, I want to say midnight dreams, and my older brother would carry me around, and I would be crying because something was going on, and I'd be afraid, and he'd say, it's okay, it's going to be all right. And I think that we've quieted the voices that say, it's okay, it's going to be all right. Because we've learned somehow as we've gotten older that those people that are saying it's okay, it's going to be all right, are making money out of our fears. They're not looking to help us. And so I go back to the poets who said, "Hey, bumped into Jake. What did he have to say?" And I think that's the important thing. When I speak to my brothers, I listen to their points of view and what they have to say. We don't agree a lot sometimes on stuff. But that's the beauty of it. We're not skipping down the road with no bumps in the road and no holes in the pavement. There are potholes in all our lives. It's how we conduct ourselves around those potholes that's really important. And I don't have an answer, man. It's I'm so happy that your frequency is both spiritually, physically, and through your reaching out to the universe through your show. that you're dealing with this, and maybe someone will listen to you and have a better moment. Because we're not guaranteed great moments all the time.
No,
Yeah.
you know, I got to tell you, I have been operating on a certain frequency for a long time, and it's a very special frequency, and it's been gifted to me. I feel very humbled to be on this path that I am, because if you know anything about Alan Lomax, who did all that field recording for Folkways Records, essentially
Yep.
that, you know, maybe we're just connecting now through the great Eric Alper, but you know, that's essentially, I am the 21st century version of Alan Lomax, and at 39 years old, my world is wide open, and I am trying to, in a very imperfect fashion, create a template for enlightenment, for promotion, and not preservation. Ultimately, so that we can overcome some of this fear and hatred, and actually, more to the point, truth. You know, it's truth. People say God is love. God is truth too. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so I, you know, even though we didn't, you know, I'm not gonna spend time talking to Andy Kim about all your pop music hits, because that's what everybody's always talked to you about it. And so maybe we did a little bit more psychosocial, humanistic philosophy wisdom, and I think it was actually incredibly rewarding for me to have this great riff with you, man. And I hope that if nothing else, it opened you up a little bit, and made you think about some things, and it'll inspire you, because I've been inspiring cats for the last 6.5 years doing just what I'm doing now.
Well, you know what? You hit it on the head, because as we were talking and as I was listening to you right now, I kept thinking to myself, wow, how filled am I right now? I'm filled with love and understanding, and sometimes the division is really a matter of semantics. It's a matter of misunderstood communication. And I feel that the time we spent together has given me, you know, such a foundation, so that when I speak again to musicians and I speak again to strangers, I will carry your torch, and I appreciate it so much.
Love you, Andy. We'll be in touch, man. It was great to connect with you, brother.
Okay. Well, all the best to you, and you know what?
Yeah.
You win as long as you appreciate what you have, and what you don't have, it doesn't really matter.
Amen, brother. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Okay. Happy birthday.
Thank you, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Just another day here on the Jake Feinberg Show, live on Power Talk. We heard from David Clayton Thomas in hour one, and just had a cosmic transmission with a legendary singer, Andy Kim. What you have, be thankful for, and what you don't have, it doesn't really matter. That's it for now. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll rejoin the Jim Parisi Show in progress.
Like a woman or someone smaller than I or anything like that. But if he or she punched me in the face 3 times, I'm gonna knock him out. Okay? I don't understand well, you just can't, and well, they just can't. These people who always want to be equal. It's always, well, women want equality. Okay, well then, if you throw something at the guy in the office, he can throw something back at you. I mean, equal is equal. And it's not a misogynist view or anything like that. It's fair. Everything should be exactly fair in a perfect world.